In every age, artists have always challenged tradition. Today's artists are no exception. They spend their lives exploring new ways of expression, experimenting with new forms to show us new ideas and the world we live in. One such artist is Grace Knowlton, who, in 1989, was commissioned to produce a set of 3 spheres for the Museum of Outdoor Arts. Half an hour north of New York City, spread about the lawn of her Rockland County home, Knowlton's art draws the viewer into a world of balanced forms and happy accidents. The spheres, hemispheres, and shards placed on the grounds show that she is an artist who likes to create things. Rather than copy what she sees, Knowlton wants us to construct new objects which express realities we are unable to see with our eyes alone. Although the form of the sphere is simple, the process of making one is somewhat complex. The first step of construction involves making a steel frame or skeleton. Using metal rod, known as rebar, Knowlton and her assistant, Liza Phillips, bend and weld it into a spherical shape which will support the layers of material to come later. Not having formal training as a welder, Knowlton has spent many hours learning the required skills. Like many modern artists, she will use any means or materials necessary to relate her ideas. Sometimes, as with using her arc welder, it means mastering new crafts. After the rebar skeleton is complete, a honeycombed metal mesh known as plasterer's lath is attached. Using pieces of wire to tie the mesh to the rebar, Knowlton and Phillips will cover the entire globe, bridging each piece of the framework. Once this is done, the sphere will be able to hold up the layers of fiberglass cloth and design cast. These layers will completely encase the piece, except for a small hole which will be left for installation purposes. Design cast is an architectural material originally created to cover building exteriors. It is a combination of minerals, chemicals, and polymers. When water is carefully measured and added, a reaction will take place, causing the entire mixture to become extremely hard when dry. In a way, it is like the plaster from which a doctor fashions a cast, and the procedure of covering the sphere is similar as well. Pieces of fiberglass cloth are first soaked in the design cast and then applied to the metal mesh. Knowlton greatly enjoys the process of creating her art. She believes the process itself is part of the meaning and content of her work, and that she is only one element in that process, not totally in control. Feeling that each piece should grow according to its own laws, Knowlton is comfortable allowing nature to take part in the creation process. If a sphere cracks or breaks, she is not disappointed. Such surprises are what she considers happy accidents and part of the entire process. They usually show her a perspective she hadn't seen before. Eventually, 3 layers of the design cast soaked cloth are applied to the sphere, with time given for each coat to dry. It is then ready for the final coat, which will give it both color and a unique texture. Because design cast hardens fairly quickly, it can only be mixed in quantities small enough to work with in a short time. Therefore, the pigment which is added to the mixture must be carefully measured in order to ensure that each batch has the same color, saturation, and hue. In addition to the pigment, Knowlton adds sand to the design cast in order to give the sphere a rough, natural texture. Water is first sprayed over each area to be coated in order to make sure the new coat adheres properly. No fiberglass cloth is used in the final layer. The design cast is simply applied directly to the globe. As a child, some of Knowlton's strongest memories come from her times in art class, such as the smell of the clay, the texture of the crayons, and the taste of the paste. It's apparent she still enjoys a sense of childhood as she smears her new creation with this fresh, synthetic mud. The sphere, which now weighs a few hundred pounds, must be rotated periodically to coat the entire surface. Between the frequent mixing of design cast and the large area to be covered, the process takes Knowlton and Phillips several hours. This step complete, there's just time to take a quick bow, and the sphere is then covered with plastic sheeting to ensure the final coat dries evenly. The next step in the process? Installation of the 3 spheres at Sampson Park. After transporting the spheres to Colorado by truck, Knowlton and several volunteers begin the task of unloading the spheres. Because of the size and weight of the pieces, coming down the ramp is no easy task, but once down, they are rolled to their spots without any problem. Making sure each one is in its correct place, blocks are placed to ensure the spheres do not roll. To install each one, a hole must be dug approximately a foot wide and 2 feet deep. This will be filled with cement, which will hold rods attached to the sphere. You may remember that when constructing each piece, Knowlton left a small opening in what would turn out to be the bottom of each. Rebar rods are welded onto the original frame. These new rods are then coated with a rust inhibitor to prevent them from decaying. The cement which will anchor the piece is mixed on site and then placed into the awaiting hole. Once sure that the rust inhibitor placed on the rods has dried, the sphere is then rolled so that the rods end up in their proper location. Knowlton makes sure the piece is properly seated with a few good shakes. Eventually, she is satisfied that the final placement of the group is balanced and correct for the site. Her belief that each sphere has come into existence partly according to its own laws, as well as her creative talents, gives her an assurance that the process went as it should. As just one element of that process, she takes pleasure in her part. Grace Knowlton is a person driven to create things which express concepts that are often beyond words. When we look at the process in creating her work, we can see both her imagination and gift for balancing forms and colors until they are just right. And we also see that, like artists of every age, she challenges our traditional ways of looking at the world around us.